He was terrific and unique. He was one of the first players actually to come out of Africa that was a big success.
When you talk about Eusebio, you talk about Benfica, and when you talk about Benfica, you talk about Eusebio. He's the biggest name in the club's history, and the only living myth I'm privileged to know.
He was a sensational athlete, so strong and so fast. You'll have to wait another generation for a player with Eusebio's ability to appear again. I'm just happy with everything I've achieved. My will to win was very important, but I can never forget my teammates, nor the shirt of my club, Benfica.
In May 1961, Benfica beat Barcelona 3-2 in Bern to become the first club apart from Real Madrid to win the European Cup. Even then, the Portuguese club were looking to the future, having just signed an unknown 19-year-old from Mozambique by the name of Eusebio da Silva Ferreira.
When Eusebio arrived, Benfica were Portuguese champions and European champions. Back then, we were already the biggest club in Portugal.
A month later, the European champions were invited to play an exhibition match against the world club champions Santos. The Brazilian side, with Pelé in their ranks, brought the Portuguese back to earth. With 20 minutes to go and 5-0 down, it seemed like a good time to give the youngster his chance. Eusebio took it with both hands, scoring a sensational second-half hat-trick.
They couldn't believe it. No one knew me back then. I actually thought Santos looked a very slow team, so I thought if I could nick the ball off them, dribble at pace and shoot whenever I could, I'd score, and that's what happened. I got 3 goals.
Benfica went down 6-3, but in just 20 minutes, Eusebio had shown the world his star quality.
Pelé asked me after the game, "Who's that black guy who scored 3 goals in 20 minutes? He'll be some player." And I think that's the historic moment when the world woke up to a new talent, to the new Pelé. I think that moment, that day, tells the story of a great player, and above all a great man, who blessed this country with his exceptional talent.
The shockwaves ran through the Benfica team. They were European champions, but every one of that lineup felt Eusebio's impact. His arrival meant that things would change.
Our first impression of Eusebio was one of fear. We talked amongst ourselves, who's going to make way for him? He was obviously an exceptional player. I said, I don't care if they're European champions or not. I'm going to get in that team. I didn't say I was the best player, but I said I would play in that side.
All of us there, including me, who were lucky enough to hear him say it, then said to each other, either this is a great player or someone so full of himself that he thinks he's a great player.
Eusebio was right to believe in himself. His first league start came at the Stadium of Light against Atletico. And for those who hadn't seen the phenomenon put 3 goals past Santos, Eusebio showed the Lisbon public just what kind of player they had at Benfica.
I never got nervous. I just loved playing the game. I'd respect my opponent, but I'd like to go out there showing that I wanted to win, that I wanted to score. I made my debut here and scored 3 goals. It was fabulous, because it was the beginning of my professional career.
Lisbon was a world away from the one that he'd known growing up in the Portuguese colony of Mozambique. But Eusebio settled at Benfica surprisingly easily. His childhood friend Hilario had been one of the first Mozambicans to make the trip to Portugal when he signed for the Lisbon club Sporting.
We arrived totally unknown. The first ever pitch I played on was in Portugal. As in Mozambique, it was just dust tracks. Even things like boots and balls, everything was different.
In fact, the history of Portuguese football was very nearly different. Hilario came close to bringing Eusebio from the Mozambican capital of Lourenço Marques to Sporting Lisbon.
At that time, I spoke to the president of Sporting. I know a kid from my neighbourhood who you could sign. The president said, no, I won't sign him. He can come and have a trial. And I told Eusebio he could have a trial. But he said, no, I'm not going to have a trial, because I'm better than the best player at Sporting.
Sporting's loss was Benfica's gain, and Eusebio's reputation quickly spread. In his first season, his goals fired the club to a second successive European Cup final. Their opponents this time were Real Madrid.
I remember that I didn't sleep well the night before the game. And then on the day I remember looking at Di Stefano, Puskas and Hento, players I'd heard so much about and was curious to see.
Back in Africa, we'd always dreamed about playing against Real Madrid. We'd heard of them, winners of the European Cup. And then, of course, they had Di Stefano, my hero.
Benfica had already broken Real Madrid's monopoly on the European Cup. Now they were aiming to create another European era.
Madrid had won 5 European Cups. We'd come to the end of our era, and it was the time for new teams. That's normal.
Madrid started brightly, however, Ferenc Puskas giving them a 2-goal lead. Benfica hit back to level the game at 2-2. Then Real Madrid retook the lead. It was time for Eusebio to make his mark on his first European Cup final.
Eusebio just had supernatural speed. It's like cars. They used to have 5 gears, then they suddenly got 6 gears. Eusebio generally played in 5th, but when he needed to, he could always find another gear.
A searing run past Alfredo Di Stefano on the right wing resulted in Eusebio being upended by Pashin and a penalty given. There was never any doubt as to who would take it. The young Mozambican's power was simply too much for Madrid's ageing stars.
He wasn't technically amazing, but he had a fantastic shot and was so explosive, so fast.
Eusebio sealed the 5-3 win with a flourish as Benfica became the first team to beat the Spaniards in a European final. Eusebio, however, was more thrilled to receive Di Stefano's shirt after the game. Was Di Stefano, the undisputed king of European football, handing on the mantle to Eusebio?
At the end of the game, he gave me his shirt, so once we'd won the game and we'd won the European Cup, the important thing for me was the shirt.
That win brought about a new kind of fame for the young boy from Mozambique.
I never felt famous. Back then I was just a kid who was 17, 18.
He may not have sought fame, but Eusebio quickly established himself as the brightest star in both Portuguese and European football. In many ways, he was the first modern footballer, combining a devastating blend of power and acceleration. Then there was that fearsome shot.
I think Eusebio added a little bit of everything to the team. But mainly it was his combination of skill and raw pace. He wasn't just a great player, but a great athlete too.
He was so good that a bad pass to him would be reported as a good pass in the press the next day. Sometimes I'd give him a really poor ball, but he'd get it under control so easily and so often score that the papers would then report how Eusebio scored after another good assist from Graça. And I'd made a mess of the pass.
He was cat-like in the way he played. So fast and imaginative. To get past his marker, he'd show incredible strength.
I remember the first time I ever played against him, you know. I thought, what a fantastic player, you know, so fast and had this desire when he got near the box, he had to finish it off with a shot.
I'd mark the defence. They thought they were marking me, but no, I'd be marking them because I was a lot quicker than any of them. When Simoes got the ball, he knew where I'd go, play the ball into space, and I'd run onto it and score.
Naturally, Eusebio's goals brought trophies for Benfica. They won consecutive league titles between 63 and 65, and it was also in that year that Eusebio received the Ballon d'Or, confirming his status as Europe's top player.
Fortunately, I came to be considered one of the best players in the world and one of the best goal scorers in the world. I did everything that a player could ever wish to do.
Eusebio's goals had bulldozed Benfica to a third consecutive European final in 1963, but the Lisbon club were not about to create a dynasty of Real Madrid proportions. Their opponents were AC Milan, and despite Eusebio's opening goal, Benfica's attacking football met its match against Italian defence. Milan won 2-1.
Knowing that we were up against teams who played that Italian style of football, I think we should have been a little more rational and cooler in our thinking, and less gung-ho. But we're Latin people, and we were more focused on the fantasy and spectacle of the game, rather than the cold, calculating style of the Italians.